Endgame has just hit $2,188,698,638 in the projected Sunday box office. So where do we even start looking for what this massive amount of money does? Well, here we've got the total world non-inflation adjusted records, and we can see Avengers Endgame has just overtaken Titanic. It is $1.2 million with an M over the top of Titanic. So it is slightly ahead of Titanic. It'll obviously get a lot bigger than this, but it has already overtaken what was the second largest film ever in its 10th day in the box office. And we can see there the only target we really have left, number one there, Avatar, $2.788 billion. Its current US domestic estimated total for Sunday is $619,698,638. A lot of sixes there. That's pretty close to the $620 million estimate that Deadline put out on Friday. So very, very, very close there. Very good estimate from them. If we look at the non-inflation adjusted US domestic totals, we can see here that it has overtaken the 9th biggest film ever, Incredibles 2, and it is just very, very slightly behind Star Wars The Last Jedi. And in the non-inflation adjusted foreign totals, it has also taken the second place in that. It has $1.569 billion in foreign income, and that is a bit ahead of the $1.369 billion that Infinity War earned, still underneath the $2 billion that Avatar has in the first place. And if we look at our inflation-adjusted totals, the real totals, the foreign inflation-adjusted total has moved it up to the 4th biggest ever. So it has just overtaken Infinity War again if it is inflation-adjusted, and it is underneath Titanic. So Titanic has $1.6 billion from foreign box office money with inflation, and Endgame has $1.56 billion. So it'll overtake that fairly soon, but not quite. So it is the 4th largest film ever with inflation with foreign box office. On the inflation-adjusted US domestic totals, it is in 42nd position between Independence Day and Home Alone. And you can see here on Box Office Mojo, they have updated the position of Avengers Endgame, but they haven't updated the rank. So they say it's 74th, but they pushed it into the 42nd place. So I guess they're halfway through updating the website right now. But it was in 74th place on Friday. Now it has moved up to 42nd. And in the inflation-adjusted world box office totals, Endgame has just overtaken The Force Awakens and is now the 7th biggest film ever. So it's $2.188 billion, is a bit bigger than the $2.17 billion, which is inflation-adjusted for Star Wars The Force Awakens. And so it is the largest film of the last 10 years. So Avatar is still bigger than Endgame at this point in time. But for the last 10 years, nothing else has gotten more money than what Endgame has earned right now. And we're only 10 days into Endgame's box office. So with all of the records that Endgame has already broken, there's really only two things to look at from now on to see if it's possible. The first is, can it beat Avatar's non-inflation adjusted worldwide total, this $2.788 billion? That's one thing to look for. It's only $600 million away from it right now. Now, $600 million is a lot of money. In the scheme of what Avengers Endgame has done, it's not that much money, but it still is $600 million. So it doesn't really matter how much money Avengers Endgame has already earned, and it's a massive amount of money. Getting an extra $600 million for any film is still a very big ask. But that's what we have here. We have about a $600 million gap between the non-inflation adjusted Avatar total and the current Avengers Endgame total for Sunday. And the other remaining question is, can Avengers Endgame earn more than Star Wars The Force Awakens got in its non-inflation adjusted US domestic box office record? So the $936 million, that's still a fair bit off the $619 million that Avengers Endgame has gotten, but can it earn over that? The number 2 film here, Avatar, 760. Endgame should really smash that, okay? It's not over the 760 yet, but all signs really point to it easily getting over 760 and becoming the second largest film in the US domestic market. Can it earn $936 million to get more money than the Star Wars The Force Awakens got without inflation? And once again on this chart we have Star Wars The Force Awakens, Avatar, Avengers Infinity War, Jurassic World, Star Wars The Last Jedi, and Endgame. And Endgame is the light blue there, the teal color. And you can see that it really can't bend around so sharply at this point in time to go underneath Infinity War, Jurassic World, or The Last Jedi. And it's only about $1 million under The Last Jedi's total anyway, so it's impossible really for it to go under The Last Jedi, and it really can't go under Infinity War or Jurassic World. So I've still got them on the chart. I had them on the chart from the start, but they're really just a reference to see how big Endgame is compared to these other films. But there's no way it's going under that. And if you look at where Avatar is, it is hard to judge because Avatar is just so far away. Avatar earned its money very unconventionally compared to what films nowadays earn their money. You can see the red line is just nowhere near Endgame. Endgame's smashing Avatar day to day, but eventually Avatar will start kicking in a bit extra money. But it still looks like Endgame really has to go way above the red line as well. It would have to really drastically die at this point, which means it's going to get more than the $760 million that Avatar got. Now, it could still go under it. Okay, it's not over that number yet, but it really looks like the way it's holding its money so far, it can't go under Avatar really in this non-inflation adjusted US total. So it's going to be at least above the red line. The real question is it going to be above the dark blue line, or how close is it going to get to the dark blue line, the Star Wars The Force Awakens? Now, there's still a large amount of money ahead of Star Wars right now. I think it's about $80 million ahead of Star Wars. You can see it has quite a lead, but it is closer than it was. Okay, it was $110 million ahead at the end of the first weekend, and now it's $80 million ahead at the end of the second weekend. So Star Wars is gaining on where Endgame is, but Endgame will really need to have an excellent box office run to overtake or keep itself above Star Wars The Force Awakens. And I don't think it can do it, but that's really one of the things we have left here to see. Can it maintain its box office money and actually earn more money than Star Wars The Force Awakens? But I don't think that it'll be able to. If we look at the breakdown for the Saturday and Sunday money, we have $61.4 million reported right now for the Saturday box office for Endgame, and that's a little bit more than 50%, 51% more than what the Friday was, which is around about an expected amount, but unfortunately the Friday was a bit smaller than I thought it would have been. So the Friday was an excellent amount of money, but it just wasn't a kind of Star Wars The Force Awakens beating kind of money. So this film's firmly in the second place, but to overcome Star Wars The Force Awakens, it really needs to maintain excellent record-breaking numbers, not just second best numbers, if you like, and that's kind of what we got here for this weekend. And for the Sunday, we have $43.7 million estimated right now for the box office for Endgame. If we look at the raw numbers with Endgame, Infinity War, and Force Awakens to try to see just what we're up against here, to see if Endgame can get this $936 million that Force Awakens got. If we take a look at the bottom three sets of number for Endgame, that's the Friday, the Saturday, and Sunday, we can see Endgame got $40 million for Friday, $61 million for Saturday, $43 million for Sunday. Now, if you look across the far left to where Force Awakens is, Force Awakens got $49 for Friday, $56 for Saturday, and $43 for Sunday. So Star Wars The Force Awakens out-earned it on the Friday. It got out-earned by Endgame on the Saturday, but it then got around about the same kind of money on the Sunday. So Saturday for Endgame was better than The Force Awakens, but not that much better. So about $5 million extra, and that's probably a record. I'm not sure if they keep records for that, but this is probably the best second Friday of a film ever, the $61 million. I can't imagine anything else would actually have more than $61 million for the second Saturday. You can see Infinity War had $46 million there, so it smashed what Infinity War had, and the money is still way over what Infinity War had, but not that much over what Force Awakens got. And again, Force Awakens earned more on the Friday and got about the same on the Sunday. So if we look at the percentage daily differences for Endgame and Infinity War, okay, over the first weekend, the percent numbers for Endgame, we had a 12% increase and then a 17% decrease to the Sunday, and for Infinity War, 22% increase, 15% decrease. So that's what we had for the opening weekend. Now after that, Endgame's Monday was a lot better, 59 versus 64. Then its Tuesday was worse, negative 10 versus 5. Its Wednesday was better, 23 versus 27. And its Thursday was a lot worse, 14 versus 8. And what actually happened with that is they're around about the same. So the numbers are all over the place, but they actually equate to be roughly the same. Their weekday performance was pretty similar to each other based on their weekend performance. But where the real difference is on the Friday. So we can see the Friday for Infinity War got a 102% increase, whereas the Friday for Endgame only got an 88.6% increase. So the total number is far better for Endgame, the $40 million versus the $31 million for Infinity War, but the percent is a lot worse. This shows that Endgame is not retaining its money as well as Infinity War did, and that's really to be expected. It has a massive amount of money. I mean, how long can it hold on to these huge records that it's making absolutely every day? Now, if we look at the Saturday, we have 48% versus 51, kind of similar, and if we look at the Sunday, 21% versus 28, quite a bit worse for Endgame. So Endgame's weekend performance, even though this is the second best weekend ever, it's only just beaten by Star Wars The Force Awakens, it's second best weekend ever, a lot better than the weekend numbers for Infinity War, the percent is a fair bit worse. And so that really means that Endgame is not going to have the same kind of legs in the US domestic market that Infinity War had. Okay, that's what this is really telling us. Now, if you look one more day ahead, Infinity War lost 77% for the Monday. I wouldn't expect Endgame would lose that much, but because Infinity War did, we really just need to use that figure as well for the Monday. And if we then now look across to Star Wars The Force Awakens, we can see Star Wars The Force Awakens earned a huge $31 million on the equivalent Monday. So there's no way Endgame is going to get anywhere near that $31 million to Star Wars. Star Wars is going to out-earn it on that Monday, the Tuesday, the Wednesday, and the Thursday. And it's most likely going to out-earn it on the weekend or get something very similar on the actual third weekend itself. So that's really where we're looking at with the current numbers right now. So now that we're all thoroughly bored with the actual numbers, let's have a look at the chart. So here's a chart showing exactly what I just described. So the blue line here is the Star Wars The Force Awakens box office numbers, the actual numbers themselves. The green line is the Endgame box office numbers to date, to the Sunday, and the red line is my projected numbers if Endgame runs the same way as Infinity War. But as I've just said, it probably isn't running as well as Infinity War. Okay, it isn't right now. There's no reason to think that it suddenly will. So this red line is more optimistic than I think will actually happen. And we can see that the blue line slowly will gain on it and it will overtake it. And so I would say at this stage, unless something very strange happens, Star Wars The Force Awakens will still earn more money in the US domestic market than Avengers Endgame. But if you look at where the red line is, it's not that far off the blue line. Okay, so it is still going to earn a very, very, very large amount of money. I would say it's probably going to earn somewhere around $880 million to maybe $900 million, somewhere around that mark there. So it probably won't get the $930 million, but it'll be around about. Now, when we're talking about this kind of money, if you're 10% out with this kind of total, is getting like $90 million out, or basically $100 million out, which isn't very handy at all. So to be in or out by $100 million isn't a great estimate, but that's the kind of money we're dealing with right here. So it could easily be, 50 million over or 50 million under that kind of number. But I think at this stage it has to shatter the $760 million Avatar got, and it'll be the second biggest film ever. Can it go over the top? I don't think so. I don't think it can actually earn more money than Star Wars The Force Awakens earned in the US domestic market, but it will earn something kind of close to $900 million, maybe $850 to $900, but I'm saying $880, sort of in the middle. That's where I think it'll actually get. So on to the international numbers, or the world numbers. So we've got $2.188 billion right now for Avengers Endgame, and we've got this $2.788 billion for Avatar. That's all we have left to look at, whether we can get that number at all. If we put the inflation-adjusted Avatar on, it's $3.2 billion. That's just even harder, okay? The 2.7 is going to be hard enough. We don't need to put inflation on, but there's really nothing else to look at rather than this $2.7 billion. Now, if we put inflation on other films, the $2.7 billion is also what Star Wars A New Hope got. So either or at the same target, okay? Is it going to beat Star Wars A New Hope with inflation, or is it going to beat Avatar without inflation? That's still the $2.7 billion, and that's the only other logical target left. Now, unfortunately, with the international numbers, there's not really the same kind of data available to be able to project things out. But right now on the surface, it looks like it should very easily be able to smash the $2.7 billion, but that perhaps may not be the case. Right now, Deadline is still reporting that they think China will earn under $610 million. I think the current total is $606 million. Now, that is an absolutely massive amount of money for China to earn, but it's already earned about $550 million. So what they're saying is there's only about $60 million left from China. Now, that sounds very low to me, but Deadline's been very, very, very good with a lot of their estimates so far. So if there is only $50 million left from China, where are we getting the rest of this money to get up to $2.7 billion? That's the real question here. Now, I'm saying that it's got a very good chance of getting $850, $900 million. Let's just say $900 million in the US domestic market. Now, right now, it's got $620 million. So that's another $280 million. So if we add this $280 million that I'm saying it might get in the US domestic market, and that's a bit more than I think it'll get, but we'll just go to 280, we get $2.468 billion. Let's just call it $2.47 billion. If we add another $50 million onto that, we get $2.5 billion, a little bit more than that, but let's just say $2.5 billion. So $2.5 billion with what Deadline thinks China will get extra, and what I'm saying I think is possible, but maybe a little bit under that, for what we'll get in the US domestic market. So if we've got $2.5 billion, we need another $288 million from all of the other countries around the world. Now, projecting what they'll get is just as difficult as trying to figure out what China will do, because again, the data really isn't available from a day-to-day basis. But it sounds quite doable. If we've already got $2.1 billion from everyone, can we get another $200 million? But some of the reports coming out now are sounding very similar to what they're saying for China. That is, that it's dying off very quickly, and that they don't think it'll earn the same kind of money that Avatar gets. So can it get to the $2.7 billion or $2.78 billion? I think it's still possible, but it is looking a lot tighter than it may appear on the surface, because if you were to tell someone, we've got a film here, and after 10 days it's earned $2.1 billion, you'll think, oh yeah, it's going to smash 2.7. If it's got 2.1 in 10 days, it's going to hammer 2.7 easily. But the rate at which it's running out of money reported at this stage from China shows that the foreign money from there is basically done. If this is true, again, this is just a projected number, it could be false. And there are similar reports from other foreign countries. So if that's the case, there's not enough money that the US domestic market will be able to pump into this to be able to pull it over there by itself. So as usual, we shall have to wait and see what the actual numbers come up with, but it does look like it's possible, but it's far more difficult than it looks like it should be, because the film is barely open. It seems like a long time, but 10 days, that's all the film's been open for, and it's broken basically every record up until now. In the US domestic market, most, if not all, the records were owned by The Force Awakens. This is still ahead of The Force Awakens. So it's got the $500 million record, it's got all the records under that. It'll get the $600 million record, it's already past that. It'll get the $700 million record, it'll get the $750 million record, probably. And it might get the $800 million record, but that might be around about the point in time Star Wars Force Awakens overtakes it, or it might not. And there's only one film that has ever earned $800 million in the US domestic market, and that's Star Wars The Force Awakens. And so to say it has the record maybe isn't quite that accurate. It's the only film to have ever earned $800 million. So all the records right now, Endgame has them all, but the money may be front-loaded compared to a lot of other films. But right now it's smashed absolutely everything. And again, there's only really two things left. Can it beat Avatar? Can it beat Force Awakens? That's all we have left. I don't think it can beat The Force Awakens in the US domestic market, but I'll keep track of it. It's looking kind of close. Avatar, not enough data to track it properly. It looks like it should do it easily after these 10 days, but it sounds like it's going to be difficult. But hopefully it can get there. Hopefully it can go over this $2.788 billion. And as I have mentioned before, the 88 might be crucial. So the 2.7 is what a lot of people are shorting it to, $2.7 billion. But it's got another $88 million on top of that. So that may be a crucial amount of money when things get tight. Can Avengers Endgame earn more than $2.788 billion? Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.